Hello, and welcome to an all new episode of the Spotlight Authors Edition. I am one of your hosts, Kinte, all the way live from Los Angeles, California, and I'm joined by the beautiful, the talented co host, Renee. How are you?
I'm good. Are you all the way from Silver Spring, Maryland?
Silver Spring. That's right.
Yes.
Land. All right. We have a great show for you guys today. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by Jen, who's going to talk about our topic today. And then we'll talk about the topic a little bit more into depth in a moment. Um, first of all, how was your day?
Super busy. Working on a few proposals. Uh, Always writing, editing. So yeah, busy but good. Productive busy. So that's always good.
How often would you say you write?
Every day.
Every day. Oh, wow.
Sometimes it's for if it's for work, then it's like government stuff, technical stuff, and from IT staff and human resources. Depends on the proposal and the topic, training, and then I write for myself and working on children's books. So every
Hmm.
day.
So, I guess we'll go into more depth in a future episode about your writing process when it comes to
Okay.
writing children's books. And, today we're going to talk a lot about you as an editor. But, you know, how long has it been since you started writing
Oh,
uh,
I was
books and
in
stuff?
books.
Yeah.
Uh, when I wrote with my twin, my first book was that 2010. I think that was when we published our first children's book.
Oh, okay.
And that was Have You Ever? So it was just like a fun, playful um, rhyme for kids. And I asking just silly questions, but um, just to get them engaged in reading. So yeah.
Oh, Um, I don't know. Like, do you have to get into the mind of a child when writing a children's book?
Sometimes I think depending on the topic, yes, or at least for your who your audience is for. I think you either have to either get in that mindset or put yourself around those that audience or whoever your book is geared for. Talk to them, see how they interact, see what they like, what makes them smile, what doesn't, um, and then kind of go from there.
Are you around kids a lot?
Oh yeah, I have five brothers or six brothers and sisters, so I have a bunch of nieces and nephews, and I'm a twin, and I have little twin nephews, so I get to see how they grow up. So it's interesting. I guess I can use a lot of what I see them do together, and then separately, which helps. I guess put me in a mindset of writing the kids' books.
What's interesting is I'm not around children as much,
Hmm.
so a lot of stuff that a lot of kids are into, I'm not knowing because I'm not really around kids like that. So I missed like a whole bunch of stuff that are children related that I can't even relate,
Yeah,
or know anything about.
yeah. We for the children's books we've used our experiences. As my sister has kids, so then herself as a mom, but then also as an aunt, we kind of use our experiences to that it just that part is natural. We're creative and able to write different children's books quickly, but we are also working on a novel. That process is different because we had to um, our first couple of drafts we asked younger people to read it and get their take, and then they would tell us we don't talk like that, you can't, that doesn't even sound like kids. So we had to kind of use their feedback and uh, things to help us move along in the process. So, yeah.
Yeah, even some of the slang is different. So
Yes.
so you're like, you know, it's like we don't say that. That's the what you old people say.
Right. And then
Kind of
sometimes we'll like I'll use slang that they have used, but it's not slang today. So they're like, we don't talk like that anymore. But
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's kind of funny and sad at the same time.
I know, because then they remind us we're old.
And
But I guess that's what we used to do. We were little, so
I used to make fun of the older folk.
right. And now we're the older folk.
Lord, yeah. So
How was your day?
it was
I didn't
long.
get to ask you.
It was long. I accidentally left my blinkers on, so my
Oh,
battery ran
thanks.
down in my car. So I was waiting for AAA to come because I don't even have jumper cable. And my neighbor gave me a jump.
Oh, that was
So
nice.
yeah, it was real nice of him. So I was like really happy that he looked out for me. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
yeah. So big shout out to my neighbor.
Hey, neighbor.
You know, the sad thing though about it is
What's that?
I don't know my neighbor name.
Did you ask him while he was helping you? Oh,
No, because I felt bad. I felt bad.
but you're
Like,
always asking people what their name is in their story. You didn't ask
but
him.
but no. Well, you know what it is.
That's funny.
You know what it is like he was so nice, and I I didn't want to be like, hey man, by the way, who are you? Like like, and he knows my name. He says my name. He's like, hi Kinte.
Oh
You know,
no,
yeah. Oh my god, I
you're gonna
feel
have to
like a
get a
jerk.
detective to find out his name.
I know, man. I'm. You know what? I might just send like somebody down there and be like, "Oh, hey, what's your name, man?" So, you know, I
That's
thought
funny.
that was not so. So oh man. So okay, yes, we are killing time a little bit because we're waiting for our guest. I thought she was on her way, so I started the show thinking like, oh, she'll just jump in. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
that's okay.
what we'll do is we'll keep talking, and then you
Okay,
know,
well, add her when she joins.
yeah. So and then in about 2 minutes we'll just start the conversation, and then she'll
Okay,
join. We'll just have her join in.
oh, that
But
works.
yeah. So um, I don't know, man. I'm gonna do better when it comes to knowing my neighbors' names and whatnot.
I'm surprised. I would have. I mean, I know. I don't think everybody knows all of their neighbors,
Right.
but I guess in that because you're so natural with conversation that I would I just expected you worked it in. But it is kind of hard, especially now that you say he says your name all the time.
He's like,
That's a
hi.
little harder.
He's like, hi, Kente. I'm like, hi.
Yeah, that's tougher. So yeah, you have to be with somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'm around them, oh, what's your name? Do you ever find that when you don't know somebody's name that you think you should, and then you find it out, how do you remember
How do I remember?
going forward? Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I I just hope that it comes in conversation. You know what I mean? So that's like my hope is that it'll just come in conversation.
Oh, okay, okay.
Or I try to use little techniques to get people
Uh
to say,
huh. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, sometimes if I get the person's name after I should have known their name or remembered their name, then I'll like make a note in my phone or something. Like, oh, elevator girl, it's Gina.
dang. All right, all right. So let's get into the topic, and hopefully our guest will be joining us pretty
Okay.
soon. we will. Uh, all right. Sorry about that. Sending out a link. Sorry about that. Okay, so the topic today is so I've written a book and now I got to get it to the editor. Now, I think one of the coolest things about writing a screenplay, writing a novel, writing just doing something creative is finishing. You know, getting to the finish line. That's pretty cool, right? You've written the book, even though if it's just the first draft, you did it. And there is an event that comes every year. You know about it. You
Hmm.
participate in it called Nano, and the 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 idea of it is to get you to start your book. You know,
Yeah, NaNoWriMo
yeah, Nano.
or whatever. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I
Yeah,
think,
National November Writing Month.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of those things that are really cool because so many people have written books just because
Mhm.
they did Nano, and they'll say, "Hey, I won Nano," which
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. All right, so as an editor, tell me about like this idea of okay, I finished the book. So at what point do you think it should go to the editor? Should it be after the first draft, after you've gone over it 100 times, or like what do you think? What do you suggest?
I'd say it depends on where you are in the process because some people are new; they've never written a book before, but they're like, "I finally wrote a book." Say it again. The first
It's
one.
your first one, yeah. It's your
Okay.
first.
Yeah, I'd say once you have gotten to the end, okay, this is how I want to end the book. It may not be how each chapter may change, as you go. You haven't gone through it, but you're finished. I think you can send it then. It just depends on the editor you find, what their process is. Because, like me, I've talked to first time authors and they finished, they haven't gone back to read it, but they need somebody else to read it for them. And then there's, depending on what services they want, I can offer to read it first and then just give my opinion. And I can take page by page or chapter by chapter or, read it from cover to cover depending on, what they're looking for. So it just depends. I don't think there's a rule, in my opinion, of when you should send it. But I think once you know that you're ready for it to be published and you want to get to the next stage of improving the writing or making sure that it is ready for publishing, then find the right editor and send it.
All right, and here's our guest, Jen. How you doing, Jen?
Jen, hi
Hey,
Jen.
I'm so sorry, guys.
That's
Technology is
okay.
always one of those stupid gremlins. Oh my goodness. But
Yes.
hey, I'm really glad to be here. It's good to see
Hey
you
there.
both.
You too.
I'm so glad to see you as well. So,
This is a great topic, by the way.
I
so,
agree.
so we're starting off. We just kind of started the conversation, and we were talking about at what point should like a first time author get the book to an editor? Um, should it be after the first draft, after you've gone over it 100 times as best you can, or I mean, like, so what is your thoughts on it?
So, okay, I'll give you a little bit of what my experience was. Now, remember that this was back in the day, right? So it was a while ago, and things have changed a lot in publishing. Because I started out with sending off query letters and
Mm,
asking, you know, first I was asking different agents if they wanted to pick me up, and my agent is actually the one who helped me find an editor. But later on down the road, I actually started working with an editor who helped me to kind of understand the entire process. Now, I'll say that when I was younger, and this is when I was writing romance novels, um, my experience was you write the novel and then you do the best you can to, give it whatever updates you can, make sure that it's in good grammatical format, that it's what you think you want to send out there. And then it in terms of what my experience was, an editor was assigned to me, and the editor just basically like picked everything apart. And I have to say that um, in terms of where things are from middle, and then there's sort of like your beginning part and then your end part. I think your editor is more should actually be more your beginning and not your middle and end,
Mm-hmm.
because it saves so much time. I can't tell you how many hours I think I would have saved for myself and for the entire publishing process if we had put the editor on board earlier,
Mm-hmm.
because there were just so many things that I didn't see as the author, and I think I have to be really honest here. As as the content creator, sometimes you feel a bit of hubris about your material, and allowing someone to kind of pick it apart and not just give you helpful, meaningful grammatical updates, but also give you the kind of content critique that
Mm-hmm.
really is helpful. That's hard. It can be really hard. So the faster you get that sort of on board, the less attached you're going to be to the changes later. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect
Oh
sense.
yeah, that's I agree with that because I think that's your baby. You
Yeah.
spent so much time writing, and you may have gone back and edited it yourself and said, "Oh, I want to change this." So you're so close to it, and now you're giving it to somebody to say, "Take this out, change this. Why did you do this?" Like ask you tons of questions, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this sucks."
I, I,
But
I
yeah.
think as a content creator, if you can remove yourself from the process
Hmm.
enough that you are looking at this as a full scale process. So in a similar way, if you were going to send a movie out, your editing process for a movie is oftentimes really different than everything
Hmm.
that you've shot up to that moment.
Right.
And you have to trust the process. You have to let and I will say this too, which I do think is important. Your relationship with your editor is so incredibly personally
Yes.
important, because if you trust your editor, you've made that connection. You've really gotten yourself way ahead of the game. I wish I had known that very early. I really do.
Yeah, that
Uh,
does make a difference.
mm,
I've had you know authors ask me to edit their work, and then just in different conversation without even editing, just asking questions. I'm like, this is probably not the right relationship because I know how I am, and just going off of the feedback or what they say. Sometimes you get that vibe, I guess, that they may not handle my critique well, and I'm just trying to help them put out a great product. So, yeah, I think the
Well,
relationship is important.
and it's easy as an author to feel
Hmm.
defensive about your material,
Yes.
and I think that there's a place for that, but you also have to temper that defensiveness with this sense of, okay, right, I feel this way about my work, but if the editing process is going to be successful, I have to step back from that defensive posture and let the entire process work, because honestly, as the artist, it's not always you don't always understand the what's a good word for this? You don't always understand the technicalities that need to go
Mm.
into the actual publishing process. And that was something that was like a big learning curve for me. So, yeah.
as we're talking, it just made me think like maybe we should define what an editor is. I know it may sound obvious, but I don't know that. I think there's probably misconceptions with some people what exactly an editor
Mm.
is when it comes to writing books.
Well,
So,
that's a good point.
Renee, would you mind just what are you in your mind? What is an editor, and what is something an editor is not that you think that people
Mm.
think it
That's a good question. Other than saying the someone who edits,
is?
um, I mean, I think they can be that reader,
Hmm.
who you're writing to. Because they can say, from my perspective, after reading this, because even though you're correcting grammar, punctuation, flow of the sentences, do you introduce this character, but didn't talk about them till 3 chapters later, or whatever it is. Although they're doing that technical stuff that like Jen was mentioning, they're still reading your work. So they're giving you the other view of, this is what the book sound like to me. This is how,
A sounding board.
what, yeah, I would say sounding board. It's like you like what Jen was saying with the relationship, kind of consider this is your best friend reading your work, and you want to see, did
Right.
their eyes light up, or did they did the emotion you were trying to convey come out, you know did they get that, or you also get other perspectives, like, I this is what I got from this character, and it may be something that you never even thought of, just because you're so focused on writing the work, you never, some things you don't think about, and then it makes you learn about yourself as a writer, and also maybe something about the characters.
That's interesting. Um, you know, one thing about being an editor, I would wonder if, like, can you be an editor if you don't like the material?
Yes,
Okay,
I can.
and do a solid job.
Yeah, I mean, if you take your work seriously as an editor, if you serious about editing and that's what you do, if you take it as, I'm a professional, I want to do the best job because that's your client. You're trying to get more. You don't want that to be the only person. Yeah, I've edited plenty of books and stories that either I thought it was just over the top raunchy and it just wasn't for me as a reader, but I was hired to edit, so I just took my personal self out of it and just did the job. And I still do the same process, but I'm just not emotional about it. So I can still do a good job
You know,
whether I like it or not.
I'm really offended that you brought up that my book that was over the top raunchy. That
Oh well, I didn't want to say, I was trying not to say your work, but I mean, there's times that some books, I thought it was written well, but it's just either not my genre,
Mhm.
so I couldn't get into it. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't a good book. So yeah, I think you can edit stuff you don't necessarily like.
No,
That actually brings up another good point, which is sometimes an editor can give you the sort of understanding that if you are writing to a specific genre or writing a
Mm.
genre book, that you might not be hitting the right marks. That you haven't. I run into this sometimes when people will write what they think is fantasy, and it's
Oh yeah.
actually not fantasy, it's actually something else, and it doesn't actually meet all the metrics, or it's a really good sci-fi piece,
Hmm.
but it's not necessarily let's say like a techno thriller or something like that. There's all of those little pieces, and again, this is back in the day, so forgive me for waxing on poetic, but I had this short contract with this little company called Harlequin, right? Harlequin
oh yeah,
Romances.
Harlequin.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, and you write under all these different pseudonyms, and
Hmm.
you're, there were plenty of times when they would come to me and say, "Hey, this needs this. Can you write it?" And then the editor, I would put in that material, and then the editor would go, "Yes, okay, this is exactly what we're looking for," or "This is terrible, and please, fix it because this doesn't work." But the there are very specific metrics that Harlequin had for when to introduce. I guess without saying that it was like formulaic fiction, it was formulaic fiction, and only the editor is really the person that could tell you how to define what those metrics were. So that job is incredibly important for both of those reasons, both to make sure that you're hitting the genre metrics, but also to make sure that you are also meeting the formula that needs to be there if it is formula in nature. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yes. Oh no, yes, that's very well said too. Um, One thing that I find that is hard sometimes when you're, because I've done something that's kind of like editing, script doctoring, right?
Mm.
And one thing that it was hard for me at first, and I really want to get this idea from you as an editor, Renee, and then you as a person who, Jen, who has their work edited. But we'll start off with Renee. Is how do you help them maybe fix their book,
Hmm.
or make it the best that it can be, but also keep their voice? Because you have maybe have ideas of how books should be written or whatnot, right? But it may not be in their voice. So how do you maintain keeping their voice, but then getting it right?
Well, me personally, I like to do. I don't like communicating by email or text. So I always either meet in person or Zoom or whatever, so that I can see the person and talk to them. Because I like to see people's reactions also to what I'm saying. Because it could be when I'm communicating, they're just not understanding what I'm saying, or it didn't come across how I wanted it to be. But I think just asking a lot of questions, because sometimes, and I always tell them, no matter what, this is still your work. Don't change it. Don't change this page because I suggested you to change it. Maybe the character speaks in slang for a reason. So don't change the slang because I said that sentence doesn't make sense. You still want to stick to your story, and what was your purpose for the story? What is your goal? I think it just depends. I try my best to ask as many questions as I can, even while I'm editing. Because there's some things I'm reading that maybe I'm not understanding, what they're saying, or I'm not getting what they're trying to convey. So I just try to ask as many questions as possible.
Now, what about you, Jen, from an author's point of view? How do you don't let the editor take your voice away, but also help you get to where you need to get to?
So this is where I think having that relationship with your editor is so incredibly important, because if you trust the editor's uh, opinion, then and I will say my editor, I won't give out a last name, but her first name was Mary, so I'll just call her Mary. She
Right? Is
and
her
she
last
was
name Sue?
no,
Oh,
although
gosh.
although I think she would find that extremely funny. Um, she she was the kind of person who would say, okay, my opinion is this, and she would make opinion very well known, but she would
Mm,
also say, okay, but this is an actual hardline fact, right? Your hardline fact is, you're not introducing enough action sequences for
right.
any of this to make sense. Before we get to this big action sequence here, you have to back this up. Like, that was just actual, this needs to change. But her opinion might be, uh, I don't like this character, and I think you
Hmm.
could probably just X him out and still have a workable
Right.
novel, and everything is going to be fine. Um, and so, to me, first of all, I don't think any author on the planet is going to have a difficult time not trying to hold on to their own material. They're going to try to fight it tooth and nail no matter what, because that's just,
Right.
like Renee said, it's your baby,
Yeah.
right? You don't stop cutting off my baby's fingers and toes. It's terrible.
No, it's not a baby anymore.
but but at the end of the day, if you sort of like relook at it to say, okay, no, we're not actually cutting the baby up, we're just raising the baby together, then you
Hmm.
kind of reframe the idea about how you're going to do, and there's going to be some arguments, there's going to be some back and forth, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you trust that your editor is trying to make your product the best that it can be for publication, that's what matters. So, once again, I think, as from the author's perspective, um, you'll always have moments when you're going to be at odds a little bit with your editor. But if you can keep it, so that you're just like, okay, well, I really like this part, this is the only thing that I think sort of backs this up, and you go back and forth, you might come to a conclusion together that, yeah, this actually is the way to go. But it really comes down to that relationship. I really believe that.
Hmm.
Mhm. Um, just as a side note, I've seen Renee edit books,
Oh,
and she has. First of all, she has an iPhone 6. Do you have your iPhone 6?
oh,
Oh my
geez. Yes. Yes,
Uh,
world. I have an iPhone 6. All the phones do the same thing. You can put apps on it. You can make phone calls. You can go online. Yes.
but she has an
It's
iPhone
not
six,
good.
and I've seen her edit professionally edit books on an iPhone 6. I'm like, how are you
Yeah.
doing this?
Because
Like,
I'm
she,
a pro.
and
I'm
I'm
a
like, don't you
professional.
understand?
I can do this.
It's really impressive.
Thank you. I
I
don't do that all the time, but yeah. But if it's something in my mind and I want, I want to capture it, or I'm on the go. I don't want the author waiting because of my schedule. So I always try to make sure I follow up with the author on a strict schedule, so they're not waiting on me.
And and that
Thank you.
that to me says that Renee is a 100% serious professional.
Thank you,
Um,
Ted.
and okay, and once again, not to like date myself to the point where I'm going to feel ancient and old, but to be honest, my the way that the relationship with myself and my longest standing editor ran was she would send me um, little bits of information, and she would say, "Okay, now call me. Now talk to
Yeah.
me and tell me what you think about this." And very seldom did we ever sort of like get on the phone and not have a ton more to
Mm,
discuss. It was always hey, this is what this means, and then that would snowball into. So the better that communication style is, and the more tailored it is to you. Like I love talking,
right.
as if you can't tell. Um,
What?
and and so and so that matters to me, right? Because
Yeah.
some editors are like, listen, no, you can contact me via email and then that's it. And then that's going to cause a problem for me because,
Right.
yeah, I need to hear your inflection. I need to know what it is that you're saying and how you're saying it, because that's how I work best.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna bring up something, and you don't have to give specifics for me. But
Okay.
in Hollywood, maybe Jen will know this term. There's a term that I don't think they use it anymore, but it's a term in Hollywood called Alan Smithy. And
Oh,
I haven't heard that one.
Alan Smithy is
I don't think.
basically when a guy directed a movie, and let's say the studio effed it up, and it didn't come out the way that the director liked it, he wouldn't want his name on it. So they would use Alan Smithy. That means that's
Hmm.
kind of like it would say directed by Alan Smithy, and that means like the
Oh,
director.
it wasn't my fault.
Right, right. It's like I don't want my name
right.
on
They
I didn't
disowned
write this.
that. That didn't. Yeah, that wasn't mine. I've actually
Sorry.
seen some Ridley Scott movies, which I kind of think maybe should have gone underneath.
So my question to you: have you ever wanted to Alan Smithy a
Oh
book
yeah.
edited?
I've had conversations before it got to the end of I'm done with my job
Mhm.
and now you can publish it. Congrats. I've had it where I've worked into in the conversation. You don't have to put me on this. Thank you. Like I don't need to be on the thank you acknowledgement page. Thank you to my editor. You're the best. No, no, no. This is your baby. This is your thing. I want you to get all the credit. I've had that conversation before, and I don't think they may be watching now, but I don't think they got what I was doing. But yeah, I've done that several times. Like, because there was one we got in every conversation. I'm just giving my feedback. This is what I read. You put this character in here, but you don't tell me why they're there. You don't say anything. They surprise I'm here and they just
They
start
just exist.
speaking.
They
It
just
doesn't like flow. Now you've messed up the flow, or some things you don't need this part. Like you're over telling me stuff that any reader would have caught. So you don't. So then there would be always it turned into arguments, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this is not going how it should go. Let's take a break. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And then every criticism I say is just learning, to get you better. They would say, nope, you're wrong. That's not right. That's not the rules, blah, blah,
Oh
blah. And I'm
God.
like, okay, if anything, I know grammar, I know punctuation. That part I know. So arguing with me on that is, that's not going to work. But it was like any feedback I gave was just like, nope, nope, nope. And I said, this is congrats. I didn't give any positive feedback on this is great work. But congrats, you did, you wrote
You
a
did a thing.
book.
You did a thing.
Now go forward and process.
You know what? Oh, just to let you guys know, be careful when you text Renee because she may give it back to you with red marks all over it.
Oh.
Ah,
So
I tried not to.
if you had to come up with your own Alan Smithy name to put as editor instead of Renee,
What I
what name
mean.
would you? Yeah, I'm gonna ask Jen the same question. If you had to come up with like a name, like an Alan Smithy type name,
Simone Barksdale.
Simone Barksdale. I like that. Actually, that's a cool name.
I know.
What about you, Jen? What would your name be?
oh goodness, I don't know.
Funny.
It's gotta be some kind of like play on words or something. It's gotta be like Drew Page or something.
Wait, how do you say? I hate this crap backwards.
Right.
Careful, you might summon that demon. Don't do
Oh,
that. Yeah. Just as a quick personal anecdote, I had written this one novel, which I thought was like, and okay, I was 19 years old, so
oh,
I
last
guess
year.
sort of give me
Yeah.
a break. I really thought I was like hot stuff, right? I was not, but I thought I was. And so I had this novel written which was about 1,000 pages long. Now 1,000 pages to write is like, look, that's blood, sweat, and tears. I really like put a ton of thought into this. I sent it off to this is the first time that I did it. I sent it off to Mary first and said, what do you think? Isn't this gonna be great? And she sent me back 2 lines and she said, rewrite.
Mm.
And that was it. That was nothing else. That
Wow.
was it.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, first of all, I was personally offended for days. I thought, okay, fine. I like went through all of the processes of grief. Like,
Mm-hmm.
clearly she doesn't know what she's talking about, and then, well, obviously, there's got to be a mistake, and then there was like the bargaining aspect. Can't we just talk about this a little? And eventually, I did understand what she was saying, and I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, okay." And so the whole work ended up being 400 pages, which was 600 pages of stuff that was edited out, and it actually, I think, turned out pretty good. So in the end, I feel like she was right, I was wrong, but getting to she was right and I was wrong was not easy. That was really hard. That was like some months out of my life that I was like, okay, fine, I guess I'm just not a good writer. I'm just gonna give up and whatever. So yeah, it's tough. It is
And I can
definitely
say,
tough.
being an author and an editor, I hate when people read my stuff before it's published because some that I know will edit it and they give
Mhm.
me like the feedback I give, and as an author, I can't take it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, just read it. I didn't ask for all that. Just read the story. I'm not asking you for it. Just read it. And they're like,
Now,
but no, this is spelled wrong. I know I'm not editing yet. I just want you to read. So yeah,
this
it's
this
hard.
actually brings up a really good point, Renee, because there is a difference, and especially now because it's
Mm-hmm.
so prevalent on the internet, between a beta reader and an
Mm.
editor,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true.
You
Yeah.
know, you know.
I should start the conversation. I just want you to beta read my project,
There you
please.
go.
No, I'm an alpha.
Oh,
Okay, so pretend this
only
is
you
fan
though, Kinte.
fiction and just read it as if it's fan fiction,
Right.
and then we can move on from there.
Something I don't like, and one of my favorite first authors I read, and well, he was the first author I read as a young person, but I still love his work. Stephen King. He does
Mm.
something that, although I like his work, I love his work. It's so annoying. He over like explains stuff. So it'll be like Kevin went to the market. He went through the double doors. He said hi to Cliff. He went down and got a basket. He took the basket down aisles 14. I mean, like, God dang, what is
Like
this?
he's in the store. I get it.
I hate that. That is, oh my God. But some people,
Okay,
they do it way too much.
What is Stephen King?
okay, but to his defense, okay, if
Okay.
you were to take out all that
Yes.
stuff, Kinte, from Stephen
Yeah.
King's work,
Yeah.
you would never have the story The Mist.
The same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
if you
That
didn't
is
have,
true. That is
like,
true.
no, I'm just joking, of course, but
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I think
But
that
yeah.
there's a whole bunch of Stephen King novels which are like, you know,
I love him.
six, 700 pages long, which could have easily been told in 350 pages.
Yeah. It's like you be sitting there, like, you'll be all into the book, and then he'll get in the weeds of, he'll be
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
Michael came home, and then he got in his
He
parking
stood
lot.
on his left foot.
Yeah, and then he'll
That
be
just lifted his arm.
and then he'll go into how he got his love seat, and how it was this Iranian woman gave it to him in 1952, and it has nothing to do with the plot. And you're like, Steven,
Yeah. Well, that's
You know who else?
hard. Yeah, because they do say show, don't tell.
right,
So then you're like, well, when am I showing too much? Does
right,
it, yeah. So that is the hard part, I think,
You
in
know who
writing.
else does that pretty
hmm
dramatically? Is George R. R. Martin.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
You don't, and you're afraid to like not read it because, well, maybe it's going to be important and,
right,
180 pages later, but chances are no, it's actually not ever going to be important. You're just reading somebody's
yeah.
pedigree or, a litany of who their past ancestors were. Yeah.
now I'm saying this to get to a certain point, and one thing as a screenwriting doctor I like to do is, when I find like there's multiple characters that kind of serve the same function,
Hmm.
I'm really big into trying to get them combined into one or two characters. And a lot of times people, they don't realize, during their authorship, that you really don't need like these eight people, because one is, you in the screenplay you got to cast all these
Right,
people.
all eight.
So
Yeah,
Right.
that can
so
be expensive.
so, but when it comes to writing, I think a lot of times authors feel like, because I have all this real estate in this book, I can have 19 characters that kind of feel like they could be one character. So,
Mm-hmm.
we'll start with you, Jen. One is, have you ever, during the course of your writing, been told that by an editor, or have you ever felt like that? The whole idea of shrinking, multiple characters down into one.
Oh, for sure. And again, this sort of goes back to, at least from the beginning, understanding how to write formulaic fiction, which is, don't get me wrong, I loved it. It was an amazing experience and it really helped me to understand how to become more creative as an author. There's a lot of freedom inside of structure. And it was really amazing. But yes, that came up often.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would be told you have too many locations
Mm-hmm.
and you've
Mm.
got to condense the locations because readers won't understand why you're skipping back and
Right.
forth between this place and this place. Let's try to make a median place where all these characters can kind of coalesce and you'll have a better experience from the reader's perspective.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, because I think one issue is the author knows everything because it's their work,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
they don't realize that it's not necessarily translating to the reader.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
if I can interject something, I think
Mhm.
part of what you're saying is really well demonstrated by the idea that we've had in recent decades of the director's cut. Right,
Mhm.
in
Mm-hmm.
editing, what you actually shoot or what you're actually envisioning is going to happen may never make it into the final cut,
Right. Yeah.
and that editing process becomes really super important. And sometimes it can even change the entire flavor of the movie.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, is that something that you come across, Renee?
Oh yeah,
condensing?
yeah, all the time. There's been like whole chapters cut just because either the author has it's already been written, so it's like you sound like you're just repeating yourself because you wanted to get to a certain number of pages, or you know what it is. So now you feel like, well, I said it before, but I need to say it again. So a lot of times I think there's parts that the story's not going anywhere. You're just kind of going in circles. I read this before, and I don't know. I found just in reading when I buy a book, and I'm like, I want to read this book. Sometimes I'm like, they've said this already. So then I feel like I read this page more than once, or am I, have they just written the same thing?
Because
There's been times that I've sent emails to just authors just to let them know, just because I hope somebody would do that for me, no matter what. So yeah, sometimes I think it's, yeah, you cut people, like Jen said, places. That's just part of the process.
yeah,
Yeah,
that. Mhm.
there's a huge difference between, and I feel like this is just sort of hindsight, but there's a huge difference between creativity and technicality. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the creators don't see the technicalities in things, and that's okay, but you need to have
Mm-hmm.
somebody to temper the
Yeah.
technicalities in your creativity. Otherwise, you just have kind of a hot mess.
Right.
And that's not what readers want. Readers need organized function because our brains don't work inside of the hot mess sphere. I mean, I'm not saying that like you can't understand if somebody throws something together and you're like, oh yeah, this is great. AO3,
Mm-hmm.
the archive of our own with the fan fiction, that it's very similar, right? Just all thrown together sometimes. But if you're talking about I'm ready for prime time and I want to have a published book, this
Mm-hmm.
is an extremely important part of the entire process. And so you have to let the editor become your technical voice, or you have to step up to the plate and realize that you have to have this co sort of parenting agreement with your content, that you're going to be able to say, yes, some of these things aren't going to make any sense, and I need to listen to who my technical contact is in order to get it straight.
Now, there's another conversation I want to have that I feel like in a larger. I want to have this in a larger conversation, and I want to have
Mm-hmm.
you back on, Jen, to talk about it. But I think like it'll fit with this is content, right? Now, if you're doing a literotica type thing, it makes sense why it would be graphic and in
Mm-hmm.
nature and stuff. Or if certain stories, I feel like they should be
You
graphic because
have to.
it's.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I read stuff and it's overly graphic and it doesn't seem like there's a real purpose or it's necessary, it especially as I've gotten older. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, it wasn't, but as I gotten older, it takes me out of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And um and I just kind of want to talk to you guys about how you guys feel about that from a writing standpoint of being, a lot of graphic content when I don't feel like, me personally, I don't feel like it fits. But I don't know if you guys ever experienced that. You kind of spoke to that a little bit, Renee, earlier.
Jen did. Well, I think, and Jen spoke to it also.
Hmm.
Sometimes it seems like authors, when Jen was speaking about like a genre,
Right.
sometimes it seems like they're forcing it. And well, I wrote a fantasy. This has to be fantasy, so I have to include XYZ.
Hmm.
So, but then it's just like it doesn't flow anymore. Like this, I'm still as read me. Even though I'm editing it, I'm still reading your work. Like this sounds like you put in 15 curse words because you feel that you have to, but you don't need it. Like sometimes I think it just takes away from the story. I edited a comedy series, and I think the guy probably published 15 books, and he would send me each one, and some of them it was like raunchy,
Right.
but some of the jokes didn't need it. I'm like, you didn't need all that. It
Yeah.
just sounds like you're trying to stick to this just because for whatever reason. So I'm like, it's just. So then it was, and a lot of it. I'm like, I don't find it funny anymore. because it seemed like just too forced.
It's like, and I'm gonna get to Jen's point, but going back to Stephen King,
Hmm.
there's a great book called Mr. Mercedes, and
Mm,
it's a really terrific book. And but there's one issue about it is the character is overly racist, like
mm,
to the point
hmm.
where he's using the N word like so much, and it's like, and honestly, it was to the point where you're like, oh, we get it. He doesn't like
Right.
this character black,
Right.
and it's like, and I was so glad when they made the TV show, they actually took all of that out, and
Mm,
it's not in the TV show at all. And so, and I know he's done that in a couple of books where he, and that takes me out of it. And also, if you ever read the book
mm.
Forrest Gump is dropping the N word all through that book. Like a lot of people don't know. Like Forrest Gump in the book is not Forrest
It's
Gump.
not Forrest Gump that we know.
No,
He's
not at
not
all.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Nah,
It's like
he's a
a
douchebag.
coconut bar.
Yeah, he was like a douchebag in the book. And
Wow.
I think the author is kind of a douchebag himself, but they really cleaned that up and made it, they polished that turd. but
Mm,
but so that kind of stuff takes me out of it, because it's like,
yeah.
okay, I get you want to establish that this person is a certain way, but it's like, dang, I mean, we have more than an orgy of evidence that this person
Right.
is this way. We get it. You don't have to keep beating that hammer like over and over. Now it's like, it's just it's like porn. It's like I don't know. I don't like it. But I don't know. What about you, Jen? What do you think about content
Well,
like that?
w- so once again, I think having this relationship with an editor can really make a big difference, because if your editor says there's a lot of superfluous material in here, that where you're saying basically, or conveying the same thoughts with these characters again and again and again, do you need that? But
Hmm.
and then you say, absolutely no, I have to have this. um Sometimes I think that that can sort of be stylistically, yes, it's going to
Hmm.
turn some people off, but also I think that there's the stylistic part that is questionable, is maybe this is lack of skill. Like,
Mm.
maybe the author just isn't able to convey what they need to convey without using
Right.
epithets and things that sort of can bring that home, because they just don't have the skill level. And I'm not saying that Stephen King doesn't have that skill level. I'm saying that maybe he just doesn't have sort of a wider open door with some of his characters that have certain traits to be able to express them. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
No, it
It
makes
does. Yeah.
perfect sense. Yeah. It's it's interesting because people, it's not about, to me, censorship or anything. It's about, like, what are you trying to accomplish with
Right.
the stuff you're doing? Like in music, you know, especially when I was younger, I didn't really care as much. As you get older, it's like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I don't want to hear, you
Yeah.
so I don't know. I get it with comedy to a certain degree and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'm not saying no situation,
Right.
but I'm just saying, like, certain things. I'm like, okay, did we really need that? Do we need to hear
Hmm.
that? So I don't know. I mean, but I'm just a guy that's trying to figure things out. You know what I mean?
We
So
all are.
yeah. So I want to thank you so much, Jen, for coming on the show. Uh, and I think our next conversation that we're gonna have with you um, will be about. I really want to delve into, like, um, responsibility when it comes
Mm.
to content.
That's a good,
You know,
good topic.
and so I want to I so the next time we do a show, I want to talk about responsibility. I mean, the next one of these topic shows, I want to deal with the author's responsibility when it
Mm.
comes to putting their stuff out in the world. So Jen, how can we get you in social media and all that good stuff?
You can find me over at moviesandmeals.com. You can also find me every week over at the Wadcast, well, at Wadco Media. My producer and I do a show called 10 to 1, which is always so fun, where we count down movies on a specific topic or theme.
All right, and anything, Renee, that you want to tell the people before we say good night?
As always, I say the only limit in writing is punctuation. So write that story.
All
But
right.
I'm just working on, finishing up children's book number 3 with my twin. Hey, twin.
Hey,
But
that's so sweet.
yeah.
All right, you guys
How
have.
about you?
Oh,
Anything from you?
no, just doing more podcasts and working on my books as well. So,
All
but
right.
and hopefully I won't be that author that you guys were just talking. So when I get it to you, my editor. But you guys have a great rest of your week
You
and
too.
enjoy the weekend. God bless.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you guys.
Oh, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.